Hey everybody, welcome to episode 5 of the Agile Wire. This week, Jeff and I talk with Chad Beier from Whiteboard Consulting about organizational agility and the PSM II course. Thanks again for downloading, and we hope you enjoyed the discussion. All right, and we're recording.
All right, this week we've got Chad Beier on with Jeff Molesky and myself, Jeff Bluebells. So, Chad, why don't you just introduce yourselves to those out there listening to the Agile Wire?
Sure. My name's Chad Beier. I'm an organizational agility advisor based out of Wisconsin with you guys. We actually all live relatively close to each other, but not in the same city. I work for my own company, Whiteboard Consulting, and I do, I'm a Scrum.org trainer just like you guys, so we have that in common as well. And I've just been doing a lot of work in Wisconsin. I'm trying to make a big impact and light up the map in Wisconsin with regards to organizational agility. So far, so good. I think the world has a long way to go, so I think we've got plenty of decades ahead of us of what we're doing.
Job security. That's great.
So job security with good intentions. Yeah. I hope that didn't sound evil.
Oh, no. I'm just chiming in. But actually, I had a question right away for you. So I know this is something that the three of us have discussed about, but it may not just be as natural to other individuals. But you say organizational agility. So how is that different than being a Scrum Master or an Agile coach, or how would you articulate it?
Sure. We're going to dive right into it, huh? So organizational agility. Well, before I dive into that, I guess I feel like this is going to be an interesting experience for all of us. So I've been listening to the podcast, and from day one until this point, I've shared this feedback with you guys, but you've developed a natural cadence, whether you're aware of it or not. So it's very organic, conversational, and you guys just throw topics out and then talk for a while, and then the podcast is over. And it's really awesome because it's just like you're talking in a coffee shop or in the car on the way to a client site, like we've always done in the past.
Yep. Or
if it's all of us jumping into my my truck and driving to another state to tour an awesome company. So anyway, I feel like I'm going to be this weird foreign object that disrupts the flow of this podcast at this point. So it's going to be interesting to see what we end up with after this.
It'll be a good experiment.
So I hope I can contribute to the natural organic cadence that you guys have been nailing lately. Okay, so organizational agility. Let's dive into it. So what about organizational agility? I guess when I think about that term, and the reason I deliberately have chosen to align around that term versus just, Agile coach, is I really want to send a signal to organizations, to companies that are willing to spend money and time with me, that I'm there to optimize at the organizational level. And when I say optimize, like you guys have already talked about this, more of a systems thinking approach, more of a global optimization goal approach, and zooming out from those local optimizations. Here I'm using Craig Larman language now. I'm only a few minutes into the podcast. I knew this would happen. And just really, optimizing for the organization to respond to change effectively into the future. And hopefully over the next few years or decades, as they continue to have pressure from competitors and disruptors, help them not only respond to change effectively, but adapt to the world around them. And that might mean reinventing themselves. But I'm talking a lot. What do you guys think?
No, I think that's a good intro. I think maybe we can just make it a little bit more, I don't know, practical for the people out there. So what are some of the things that you're doing, Chad or Jeff, with people to help gain organizational agility within the teams, within the companies that you're working with?
Yeah, well, I'll dive in. Jeff's
Sure.
Pointing at. When I think about it, what do I do differently, or what does that look like in practice, playing out at client sites? I mean, I do a lot of typical things that an Agile coach does, right? Spend time with teams, go through training together and spin up new teams and, you know, level the language across the organization with regard to all kinds of practices and frameworks like Scrum, Kanban, and all that fun terminology. But beyond that, what I like to spend a lot of time doing, especially at the beginning of an engagement, is talking about what is your product. And I continue to talk about this conversation. We got some webinars floating around out there on the internet through Scrum.org on defining your product. And a few years ago, I developed just an organic technique. I was with one client and I went to the whiteboard and afterwards I sort of reverse engineered what had happened into sort of how I always operate now on site with most clients. And so I like to look at where's the work coming from a demand standpoint, and where are the people delivering against that demand and delivery and rationalizing that. And so what it looks like early on in engagement is not just, hey, here's Scrum, Scrum's awesome, let's learn Scrum and then let's do Scrum, but really, what are the benefits that Scrum intends for us to get? And I'm using Scrum because it's, you know, the most popular framework under the Agile umbrella. But beyond that, how do we maximize the benefits of it? Well, we need to make sure we have our product definition aligned. And then more importantly, once we've defined what our product is, quote unquote, and that could be a service or a capability, how are we best equipped, or how are we best to organize around that to deliver against that product most effectively? And that's where, you know, we throw all the buzzwords around like self-organizing teams and cross-functional teams, and those fundamentals that really hit the mark on helping organizations, teams, departments demonstrate agility. And on the negative side, or the sad, unfortunate side, hold organizations back if those fundamentals are missed along the way.
Right. And from what I've seen, like, if you don't get that product definition right, you're going to be running into problems left and right. And things just aren't going to make sense to you. You're like, man, I don't understand why we have to do a daily Scrum. Why is it every day? I don't understand. Why does the sprint reviews feel so painful? Why do people not want to come to it? Like, all these things, like, they just start like not making sense that are part of Scrum or just really any Agile framework that you start using. And you're like, this just doesn't work for us. And that's at least what people think, because they think, oh, we're a unique snowflake in our organization, and this doesn't work. But what ends up happening is it's like, well, what are you really optimizing for? What is the big thing that you're trying to produce for your company? And it's like, well, I develop servers, or I'm the product owner for QA. And you're like, whoa, wait a second here. Like, these are things that they're not actually products. They're components of a product. So let's take a step back, realize what that real product is, and then align around how we can maximize that value. Because it's not about people management, it's about value maximization, which is very different than what traditional organizations are aligned around. What are your thoughts on that, Chad, Jeff? You see the same things?
Yeah, so I'm just nodding along as you were going, but you know, way back at the beginning of what Chad was talking about, I can't remember exactly what triggered it in my head. It was just like, if you could summarize it, it's, you know, choosing what you want to optimize for. Is it optimizing for value delivery or optimizing for keeping people busy? And I think we've talked about this in the past. Just there is a difference. Not to say one is necessarily right or wrong. Well, one probably is more right than the other one in your context. So perhaps in a more simple area, you use the milk jug analogy. Hey, we're just making milk jugs. The more we can produce, the more value we're going to get. That makes sense. But that's because there's a known value of the milk jug when you're done with it. Like, we know that. That's why assembly lines are so effective, because when you're putting together a car, there's a known value of the car that is coming out of the assembly line. When we're in a complex area, when we're making something new, we don't know we have assumed value, but it is just assumed until we can actually realize and validate the value at the end. And so optimizing for just keeping that conveyor belt busy at all times may not necessarily be what we even want in these scenarios.
Yeah, I would add to that too. I mean, you went down that whole productivity path, and I think there's so much time spent, I should say time wasted, or time spent maybe unproductively, and I guess I'm inserting puns now, the productivity of teams is really not what agility is about, right? But too often, I think Jeff Sutherland wrote an article about this, one of the most recent HBR, the Harvard Business Reviews, right? There was a call, it was kind of a signal out to the market to say, hey CIOs, wake up. Agility is not just about productivity, and you need to learn what this word agile means. And that was years ago now. I can't remember how many years ago, but I want to say 5-ish. So where am I going with this? I continue to encounter organizations where the agile buzzword is really just about squeezing more productivity out of things and missing the real game changer in that, hey, there's more to agility than just productivity, right? I'll go back to those words I used earlier: responsiveness and adaptiveness. Just the ability to demonstrate agility, not just productivity. And, you know, you're danced around also like the type of work, right? Complex environments. I always am talking about knowledge work economies now, right? Like we are a knowledge work economy, and the way we think about getting work done is completely different. The way you think about the employer and employee relationship is different, right? Because you're paying for someone's brain, essentially, on the job. You're no longer paying for labor and productivity to do a simple, repeatable task in which someone could be replaced, right? So I think, you know, we're unpacking all kinds of topics now. But the thing that I think the glue that holds a lot of that together is where I continue to spend my time in the product definition. And I'm practical enough to say, let's get started even if we don't have the right product definition. But I try to throw that warning into the air to say, hey, we likely will encounter the following: lots of cross-team dependencies, handoff delay, right? All those things that from a global system view, you're trying to not do, right? You're trying to not manage dependencies, but eliminate dependencies. You know, maybe that's, Jeff, I know you're going to dive in here because I keep cutting you off as you look, you want to chime in, but
there's so many things.
Yeah, but how about this for a question back to you guys? Because I feel like this is where I spend so much of my time in what I do. The world wants me to come in and manage dependencies and give them an answer for how can we better manage all these dependencies. And I almost always am saying, I can't help you with that. I mean, maybe I could, but I really am going to earn my money, right? Earn my part of this relationship if we look at eliminating those dependencies, or maybe even minimizing. But I like the word eliminate because we got to aim a little farther than where we're going to get.
Right.
What do you think?
We're going to eliminate the most frequent dependencies that are out there, and we're going to make really hard decisions to keep some that don't happen that often, for the sake of efficiency, if we want to do that in some rare cases. Like the example that I always use is, you know, we work with a lot of insurance companies, financial companies, and we're not going to put a lawyer on each of the teams. That just probably isn't practical. We probably don't need that skill set that much. But there are times when we're releasing things to the market where we do need a lawyer to review things to make sure that we're in compliance with all the regulations that are out there, because there's just so many. But that's maybe more of a better use for a shared service. But there's other cases where it's pretty frequent, but we just manage the dependency over and over and over again on a daily basis instead of just get rid of it. And I think those are the areas where coming in, and if we stay where, because organizations are traditionally structured around components or around people that do one specialized skill set. And if we say we just take the specialized skill sets and we're just going to have each of them be a Scrum team on their own and not really change much, but have them go through the framework, I see that being where like it's too easy to get into mechanical Scrum, where you're going through the process, but you're not living the values, you're not producing value, you're not focused on value. There's nothing really done coming. Our customers won't notice a difference. So those are the areas where it's like, let's slice across, make some real cross-functional teams. And when I mean cross-functional, I'm not just saying IT. I'm saying whatever we need to produce the product, concept to cash, all the way through, get those teams there and then focus them around a more broad-based product definition so that you have agility of where you want to spend your money. Now, there might be cases where you don't want agility, but there's a decision. There are certain parts of your company where you do want agility. You want to be able to change directions quickly, and you want to work on the highest valuable thing, even if it's not the most efficient thing to do it, but it is the most effective thing. Now, that might not be for bills. Like, we might just want to process our bills the way we always process our bills. That might be an efficiency play. Totally get it. But there's something like, whatever our core business is, we want agility there. And we want to be able to respond faster in the marketplace than our competitors, and we want this to be a competitive advantage. Those areas, cross-functional teams, all the way across concept to cash, all around a large product definition, I think are just essential. And I think that a lot of people miss that when they're trying to implement Agile or buy that off the shelf, as we like to call it, right? Like, we always say, like, oh, you just can't buy it off the shelf. That's what people think they can do. And they're just going to install Agile. It doesn't work like that. So those are some of the things that I see a lot. And just want a quick reference back, I just Googled your Jeff Sutherland article. It's called Embracing Agile. It's from 2016. And it's a really good HBR article about calling out to executives saying, hey, you guys are really the limiting factor here in most organizations. It's on you to bring this organizational agility forward and promote the behaviors to allow agility to happen. So that's a great article. I've sent it to the CEOs of a couple companies I've been working with, one large one, and did some training with them before we did training. I'm like, everyone needs to read this. And it was a really good article to kind of set the mood of like, hey, there are some big things we need to start reflecting on as a organization.
Yeah, that's awesome. Could I shift gears and throw a question at you guys?
Sure.
Do it.
Why not?
So this entire conversation, I feel like this is played out on podcasts all across the Agile lands, right? Like this is not a new conversation. So what I'm curious about is for your opinions. Lately, I've been grappling a lot in my head with the typical responses. Sometimes I hear in training of, well, this will never work unless we get buy-in from the top. And then if you talk to someone at the top, they say, well, this won't work unless we have high top talent employees we can trust, right? Or, our employees, they've been here for years and years. They're not ready for this. And so there's finger pointing from the top and bottom. And then, of course, I mean, again, overused analogy in our space, but the permafrost layer of middle management stuck inside because they're getting conflicting direction from both sides of the equation. So I guess, do you guys have the super secret sauce to just crack this open and how can we, over the next few decades, let's say, there's no one answer, but I know how I've been talking around this topic recently. I'm curious to get your opinion. What is the best approach to this, to getting buy-in, to getting things to stick, to getting change to start, to sustain? What is it?
What do you think there, Jeff? I'll let you answer since I think I answered the last one.
I'm always brutal in some of my stuff that comes to my mind. So I'll try and be a little bit kinder with it. Have I personally been successful? Not really. I think there's just part of it from my experience is the individual, and I think especially in a lot of the societal things we have going on is this overgeneralization of people, especially with politics right now. But I think it's overgeneral to say middle managers are just managers because, really boiling down to the individual, there are some of those quote unquote middle managers who are super excited about this stuff and just jump right into it. And then there are others that are just completely resistant to it and can be that permafrost layer that you're talking about. So I guess where my head is at is it is an individual by individual basis of needing to talk with that person about it. I do think the tool though, and not that it's the silver bullet, but it's one of the tools from the PSM II course that I do really like is that empathy map and trying to understand really what am I missing. In fact, and we'll talk more about this later on, but somebody also brought up a great conversation in this last class we did, which was every jerk has a motivation. Like they are acting the way they are because they have some sort of motivation. And what can we be doing to try and figure out what that motivation really is? And so I think that empathy map is a good start, and just the kind truth, right? Like going to that individual and telling them, hey, this is what I think you're going through. This is where I think your headspace is at. Where am I on target? Where am I off target? What am I missing? Just to build that empathy. And we talk about that courage and trust all the time. I think that's a great example of having the courage to step out of your space and being open with somebody and saying, here are all the assumptions that I'm making about what's going on in your head, in your space, why I feel like I am getting resistance to you in this area. How can we maybe build on top of this? But what do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it gets down to really people um, having a bunch of conversations together and getting aligned and moving in the same direction. So there's many different things that we do, right, as coaches within organizations to help that. I mean, Jeff, you had a great story the other day about how you got together with a couple of VPs and directors and did that fishbowl with them, and we're going to be doing some of that coming up here in the near future, where you put everybody in a room, but like they can have this intimate conversation with maybe somebody in the organization they normally wouldn't have, and they kind of get aligned on where we're going and what we're actually doing. And then there's not that finger pointing that Chad was bringing up before, where it's like, well, the people doing the work would never do this, and then the people doing the work are like, well, leadership would never buy into this. They don't get what actually happens, and then they actually have a real conversation. They talk about real solutions to their problems, and they can make a lot of stuff happen fast if they have the conversations, and then they work more like a network and not like this hierarchy that goes up and down. And I know that gets talked about in a lot of Agile books, right? Like this network, but just starting to treat it that way and not being afraid of change, I think is a really big thing. That's another thing that I do see in a lot of areas where it's like, well, we can't change because there's so much riding on this. And it's like, but it hasn't worked ever in the past. Don't we have to try something different? Like, why do we think something different is going to happen? Like, isn't that the definition of insanity, to try the same thing over and over again and expect a different result? Like, it's going to be the same that it's always been. If you want something different, we need to try something different. And maybe we just need to listen to each other and say, this is what we need to be successful. Let's put that environment in place and create a system where people are successful. And as you inspect and adapt, and you continually work through that, I think you get into more of a dynamic, value-focused area that is very similar to what we talk about all the time: cross-functional teams that are aligned around broad product definitions, focused around value delivery. Like, I think those things just continually come back, and you're customer focused, you're aligned around your customers and your code bases, and the people doing the work. Like, you just bring that decision making down to everyone having accountability and responsibility to what's being done, and it's not a blame game. It's like, we're in this together. I think these things all start happening when the right conversations happen. And so I think you have to start at all levels. And I know I'm going to go Craig Larman here on you guys again, but C to C, like he talks about coder to C level and going all the way in between. And I think that's the way that we can coach. And I've been trying to do more and more of that as well in the organization. Try to hit at every level, get buy-in. And really, I'm not doing much other than just saying, you two need to talk. Here's this person's idea. Here's this person's idea. Connect them. Let this thing start happening. You remove this impediment, I'll connect you guys. You guys go remove that impediment. And you're just really a facilitator of impediment removal. And that's kind of the strategy I've been having lately, because I don't need to own that. Because if I own it, then all of a sudden I walk away. And I've seen this happen too many times, where I walk away and things are great, and then all of a sudden things just go spiraling downhill again, because people don't understand how to do it on their own. And they haven't got to the point of continuous improvement. And granted, there's many reasons why that happens. It's, hey, we don't want to pay for this anymore. It's like, oh, we feel like we're in a good spot. It's whatever. And, oh, just get us here. And so you listen to do that, but it's not what they really need. So I just unpacked a whole bunch of things there, but I think that getting the buy-in from people, having them own those conversations, own their own solution, is a key to making organizational agility work.
So one thing I wanted to jump in there real quick with was, you had mentioned like that fishbowl scenario that I had gone through, but it really made me think it was just simply getting everybody into the room, right? So Chad, you kind of started this off with, I talked with the people who are doing the work down here, and they say, oh, our leadership will never have a buy-in. Then you go talk with leadership, oh, same thing, just reverse. But even in my experience with training, we're training in layers. So we're training all the executives and all the leaders in one room, and then we're going to train all of the development team members over in another room here. But like when we did the fishbowl, it was a cross section of those layers all in a room. So not just I don't I guess what I'm getting at is I think maybe the power wasn't necessarily the magic pixie dust of the exercise itself. It was the magic pixie dust of having those different layers of an organization in the same room, all being able to talk with one another in a human to human interaction. So, sorry, you're
Chad, you're just nodding your head left and right here. So
No,
I
I'm
think
so excited. So you guys went to places that I had in my brain. So I knew the word empathy was going to come up. Love it. And then the kind truth, and I was thinking tough love. And then Jeff, you just brought up really just getting people in the same room, right? And I've been thinking about this as just like talk time, like just sharing talk time together, or just sharing like time in a room together. And this could be management and Scrum Masters. This could be product owners and Seiko, like whatever it is. Just getting people to spend time together is like maybe a really simple, practical tactic to hit the mark on many things that might be holding us back. So I was jotting down things as you guys were talking. When I summarize, this started with the PSM II conversation, right? The Advanced Scrum Master course that you guys just finished teaching one actually, Thursday and Friday. And then we're all three of us for the first time going to be teaching one tomorrow and the next day. So it's kind of funny that we're just sandwiched right in between these Scrum Master 2 courses. But anyway, when I think about change agents, right? And of course, I go to Scrum Masters in organizations. I think of those rebels, they're driving change. They want to make a difference. We're external change agents mostly. Or I guess in the work I do as an external consultant, I'm an external change agent. But I remember what it was like to be an internal change agent, much harder, when I tried to start an Agile revolution at a company I used to work at. So the words that stand out to me are patience, persistence, courage, and empathy. And I think, there's probably more words we could add to that equation, but I think there's times where you have to be bold and courageous to be a rebel and to challenge ideas. And you have to have empathy in doing that to be able to navigate the human dynamics, right, in the space you're in. And then when I think about change agents a lot, it's a combination of patience and persistence. It's almost like working out. When you start out, you have to be patient enough that you're not going to see results immediately, but you have to be persistent, knowing that someday I'm going to see the results I want to see. And there's, pick your analogy. I'm sure there's many analogies beyond just working out that would work in that same space. So
right.
There's
definitely
I'm
a balance there.
right?
I really like that patience and persistence and having a balance there, because what you see a lot of times is, especially internal change agents they've been on with a team or with an area for so long, it's kind of that upside down turtle analogy that we use in the PSM II, where it's like, woe is me and I can't change anything because it's all too big for me. But it's like, no, you need to be relentless on some of this stuff and then patient in other ones, right? Like, yeah, I'm just going to keep nudging little bits all across and educating and pushing in this direction. And then sometimes it's like, this is just too big. Like, I have to be uncompromising because this is a values thing right here, maybe, or this is like quarter empiricism. If we don't do this, there is no transparency, and without transparency, we can't inspect and adapt. And this is something I have to like be ready. Like, I'm gonna stay strong and I'm gonna fight this hill right here. And I might have to die on this hill. Now, again, everyone, take that with a grain of salt. Like, we don't want Scrum Masters going and getting fired left and right, but I say this all the time to Scrum Masters, that if you don't at some point feel like, man, I could get fired for what I'm doing right now, you're probably not pushing hard enough. Like, that's the feeling you should feel as a Scrum Master. That's what we want Scrum Masters to be, is we want them to be our boat rockers in the organization, pushing us towards organizational agility. No one else is going to do it. You're going to be the ones to do it as Scrum Master. So like, that's my challenge out there to Scrum Masters, is keep pushing, keep fighting the good fight, but be patient and have perseverance. You need courage, empathy, all the things we just talked about. I think those are great things for Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, really anybody who wants to change their organizational culture. Those are great things to be considering. And great reminders for us as coaches as well.
That's awesome. So you have me all excited and refreshed in going through this conversation. So here's what I'm thinking. Change agent is a word I use a lot, but I think it's too blah. It's a change agent. Like, it doesn't, like, okay, what do you mean by change agent? So here, I truly believe after this conversation, we don't need buy-in. I mean, it'd be nice. It's always nice to have buy-in, because buy-in is essentially alignment. But if you don't have buy-in, or if you don't have alignment, here's the warm and fuzzy I get in the work we do, that I think as long as you follow this formula, you'll be okay. And when I started my own company, you guys know I loved going through strategy diamonds and all kinds of things. And what's your differentiator? I love asking people who run their own companies, like, what's your differentiator? What makes you different in the marketplace? And so in assessing myself, I was trying to come up with like a short elevator pitch, of like, and not a pitch and a sales pitch, but like, what is it that I stand for? Like, what are my principles? What is it that I'm trying to do? And the tail end of that sentence, I honestly can't remember my sentence exactly, but the tail end is positive pressure for change, right? I can help organizations by applying positive pressure for change. You guys know I like to use the word nudge a lot, like you guys nudge me all the time, and I hope that I'm nudging you from time to time. It's very therapeutic. We nudge each other back and forth, like personal coaching. So long-winded to get here, but I think positive pressure for change combined with patience and persistence is a winning formula. I mean, because if you trust that that's going to work, you could stick with a company, you could stick with someone for 5 to 10 years, and it might take that long, but you didn't need buy-in to get there, right? Versus the alternative is you walk away from that person, that team, that department, that organization, because quote unquote, you didn't have buy-in. And then is the world a better place, or did we just leave them, out there on their own? So I'm feeling pretty good with this conversation.
Yeah. What do you think about adding the word consistent positive pressure? Because I think it's great to have positive pressure, but sometimes it doesn't happen consistently enough. And so that it's just people get complacent. I think that it's a very big thing to worry about as an internal change agent, is that you get complacent, because it's easy for you to get comfortable. As people, we want to get comfortable in a space doing whatever it is. And relationships within our home life, within our work life, we want to get comfortable, but we should be pushing the uncomfortableness to positively change our environments. And so it's
okay,
like,
how's this? Consistent, empathetic, positive pressure for change with patience and persistence.
I like it. Yeah, it's good.
We better stop sooner. We'll just add all the words.
All the words. Yeah.
All the words.
Yes.
And then we'll lose its effectiveness.
Right.
Good stuff.
I know, Chad, one of the things you talked about before we started recording was you wanted to talk about, kind of switching gears here, is the PSM IIs. You kind of brought it up before, but it's going to be interesting. We have never taught this course coming up here with 3 instructors. We're going to try doing that coming up here on Monday and Tuesday. And Jeff and I just taught it on Thursday and Friday. And I was telling Jeff on the way home that, man, like, I'm starting to feel really, really, really comfortable with this course. Almost maybe even too compliant at times, where it's just like, I don't even need to look at the invitations anymore. I'm just going to get up there and talk and just make this thing work. And maybe it's not always the point, but we're like, oh, we could add these things to like make sure we have these takeaway points, or make sure we get to the conversation we want to have, and not let the organicness that we want to have in this course, maybe give it some tighter guardrails to make sure we hit all the take-home points, or take all the takeaways away that we want people to take away. So we have some ideas, some changes we've been making, but it'll be fun to go through it together. And I know it's been a couple months since you and I did the last one at the end of January together. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about it. I mean, I talk about this course nonstop ever since the course came out, and then we got to experience it, Jeff, and get licensed to teach it. It's so it's just so different, right, than a lot of other courses. And I just like PowerPoint when I'm teaching, because I just feel like it's constrained. Oh, for the same reason I don't like it when I go speak at a conference. It constrains me. I feel like a caged animal, and I can't go off the script, right? But but like a flip chart is my happy place, because I can just take the conversation wherever. So whenever I teach any of the Scrum.org courses, I love the rabbit hole conversations. I love going down those paths, but I'm always challenged by the time constraint, the time box of a 2-day course, and I have to still hit the curriculum and make sure the takeaways are there, right?
Yeah.
So
yep.
I think the reason I love the PSM II so much is we don't use PowerPoint at all. It's all on the walls. It's all facilitation.
On the floors. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that is just so, it's just so rewarding.
It's liberating.
It's liberating from a teaching perspective, right? Selfishly, it's my favorite course to teach. But then on top of that, it's so rewarding because at the end of the 2 days, we always build rapport and trust with students in the classroom, regardless of the course. But this course is like, it's times 10. I just feel like you leave the 2 days like with a really good feeling that you've made a big difference in the Scrum Masters that were in the room, and that they're going to go out and then change, the landscape that they're faced with. So I think that's what I love about it the most. Now, yeah, we're teaching it for the first time with 3 instructors. My biggest concern there will just be sharing talk time, like any group growing, right? Like if we were a Scrum team of 2 and we became 3 or 7 or 10, like growing pains, right? It comes down to effectively using the time when there's the same time box, but 3 of us now who want to probably dive into those conversations. I don't doubt that it will be magical, though. I think it's going to be.
I described it as warm apple pie the other day. So tangentially related to that, I don't know if Jeff shot this over to you, Chad, but we actually had one of our students had taken and passed the PSM III in our course on Thursday and Friday. And I thought that was super interesting because what is it, like 500 people have passed the PSM III worldwide. Yeah. And like half of those are PSTs, right?
Right.
So, one out of roughly 200, those are some slim odds right there to have one. So anyway, it was really cool. He was obviously a really knowledgeable individual, but kind of going back to your point about not having the slide deck and not being so confined by it is just the autonomy of the organic conversations that could come out, which is to say, if this is really what everybody is struggling with or wants to be talking about, well, that's the direction we can go with these conversations as they're organically coming out. Mm-hmm. And really gives so much flexibility for us to, step in, rein things in when we need to, but we can really just kind of let all of the students kind of go off on their own for a little bit here and come up with a solution that, maybe one of them have had a lot of success with, where even we as trainers haven't run into that before. So I agree. I think that's part or a big part of why there's so much positive feedback over this course. I mean, we always hear again and again how good the Scrum.org curriculum is versus others that are potentially out there. But even this, again, on another level above that for just the PSM II.
Yeah, I mean, I had in that class, half the people come up to me individually throughout the 2 days, and after the first day and into the second day, say, "This is the best course I've ever had in my life. Thank you so much." And I'm just like, that it makes a big impact as an instructor, knowing that you're helping other people, and really helping them reaffirm all the things that they know and say, I need to be stronger here. I know this stuff. I just got to do it. And so it was pretty cool. Like there were a number of points where Jeff and I were coaching, and we kind of looked at each other and we were ready to jump in. And then all of a sudden, like the rest of the class just kind of coached each other up on things. And we were like, this is just awesome. Like we just created the space and the right invitations at the right time. And they just took it and it was awesome. So it was a great learning space. And I think we just have to be conscious of that on Monday and Tuesday, that it's not about us, and it's really about us just putting the right space out there and the right guide rails, and then just kind of like making sure we don't go too far outside of those guide rails and steer them back when we need to. But whatever happens too. Like it's a little bit of like the open space concept, where it's like it's supposed to happen this way. So just making sure that we're having good conversations and that we're not letting them go too long is probably things we just have to watch, the 3 of us together.
As I was listening to all of us, talk, because I'm trying to practice some self-awareness and read the room, I'm imagining a listener listening to the whole segment we just completed on the PSM II, and it's like, man, it just sounds like a big sales pitch. These guys love teaching them. And I hope it didn't cross that way. If it did, and you're still listening, you haven't turned off the podcast. Like, I think for me to summarize it, there's a few courses, and this will lead into an actual plug that I have towards the end here for a course coming up this summer. But there's a few moments in my time in this space, in the Agile space in consulting, where I've been rattled, and rattled in a good way, like challenged. Our egos can get in the way. We're all guilty of that. And you get to a point where, even like on this conversation, we've talked about our approach and how we do things. And, you can settle into that and then forget that, like, hey, I need to continue to work on myself, continue to learn and get better. And so some moments where I've been rattled. One time I saw Jeff Sutherland speak at a meetup in Silicon Valley when I was teaching a course out there. And I hadn't seen Jeff Sutherland speak before, and just the content that night and the way he delivered it, it just rattled me, right? It made me question the way I'd been approaching things with clients. And I wondered, maybe I've been missing something over the years here, right? Another time in my life that I was rattled was when I discovered Craig Larman's book. And this was probably has shaped my approach the most, right? Is one of his first two books, or the first two books, and that's Boss Boat as well, co-authors. And then attending Craig's course was a big rattling experience, right? And it just really shaped the way I approach organizational agility. And then the other time that I've been rattled recently was when when we attended the PSM II with Ryan Ripley and Todd Miller, and I just realized, people had told me about the course and they said, it's a great course, just like we're doing right now. Oh, it's so great. But when you experience it, you realize it's not just for Scrum Masters. Like, this course is like, you could go to this as anyone who wants to practice like good leadership skills, or any change agent skills. And so it rattled me because I realized, again, like, I got maybe a little comfortable in my approach, and I realized that maybe I didn't have as much empathy as I needed to for some of these people on the engagements I'm on. So anyway, that's a really long bow to tie that off. But I think the reason that we went off on that PSM II sales pitch, quote unquote, was because it is one of those things that was truly impactful for us. And so, yeah, I'm trying to backpedal and justify that to any listeners that were turned off by it.
I think it's great. We're excited about it. I hope our passion comes through. Like, it's not intended to sell it. It's just because we're excited about it.
Yeah.
The other thing, Chad, that we wanted to do is just give you an opportunity if you wanted to promote anything else here at the end of the podcast, anything personally that
sure,
that you're doing, where you're speaking, how people can connect with you.
Yeah. I really do a bad job of a poor job of marketing courses that I'm teaching and things like that. I post the occasional LinkedIn thing, and then I'm just passive sales. So anyway, I do have some upcoming PSPO courses. Of course, teaching a lot of them with you, Jeff. But April, there's one coming up. May, there's one coming up. You can find any of these courses on my website, whiteboardconsulting.org/training. And then the one that I have that I really want to share with people is the July 10th, 11th, and 12th. Craig Larman is coming back to Chicago. He was here last year, and I partnered with him on the course. So I'm not teaching the LESS course, but there's a certified LESS practitioner course, and Craig is teaching it. And July 10th, 11th, 12th. Also on my website, so you can go find details there. But Jeff, you've been in the course last year. I've taken the course multiple times now. I think every time I take the course, I'm going to discover something new. But I think you'd probably agree that it's one of those very impactful, kind of mind-bending, breaking, shaping courses that really gets you thinking about organizational agility.
Yeah, I was telling Jeff this just the other day. I'm working with a couple teams, actually a new product area, 4 teams doing a small LESS implementation. And I was like, I'm going to refresh myself on Craig's book. read it multiple times, but I want to go back and read that, the latest one. And I read it. I'm like, I say that all the time. Oh, I say this all the time. This is where I got that from. I mean, it's so ingrained now in me that I don't even realize that's where it's coming from. And so I guess I just reflected. It was on Friday this week. I was reflecting on how much Craig has impacted me and my training and my coaching. So it's rattled me too. Like, that's definitely one of the courses that rattled me as well, and really just shaped the way that I approach things.
Yeah. So if anyone's interested in something like that, reach out, and you can find me on LinkedIn too. I don't really do any other social media stuff. I sort of gave that up years ago. I'm just not very good at it.
And one other thing, if you're in the Madison area, Chad, Conrad, Hadikevich, and myself, we run the Mad City Agility Meetup. So it's a first Monday of the month. We normally do it. You can just look for it on meetup.com and find it. We'd love to have you. Membership continues to grow. We've got a nice cadence and backlog of people that are starting to get out in front of this, so you can see the next few meetups, who's going to be coming and what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, and then it's almost public speaking season, right? Conference season.
Yeah.
So we're going to be. I heard you guys plug your talks last week, so we don't have to do it again. But I know we're going to be at some professional development days, project management conferences in Madison. We're going to be doing some the business analyst development days, IBAD in Des Moines, Iowa. I feel like there's something else out there that I'm forgetting. But anyway, yeah, it'll be fun. So if you're in the area, you're going to any of those events, you might see us there.
Awesome.
Is that it, guys? Is that it?
Well, thanks. Thank you for joining us on Agile Wire, and we'll have you back again sometime in the future, Chad.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks all.